It's been 6 months since I picked up my Tesla Model 3, and I wanted to give you an honest review after those first 6 months. And if you're looking at ordering a Model 3, there are probably a few reasons why you'd be interested in an owner's review, and that's the running costs, the reliability, and the practicality of owning one. And as always, if you have any questions about my car or my ownership so far, drop them in the comments below, as I do try to reply to every single one. So first up, the reliability of the Model 3. Before I ordered it, I'd read several horror stories online about reliability, paint defects, poor service, charging issues, and so on. So I went into this fully prepared for a bumpy ride, or at least a list of problems from the start. But it never happened. I've only had one issue with the car so far, and I've only used the Tesla service centre once. And this was actually due to my wipers not working. And from my research at the time, it seems that no one else has ever had this issue before. So you have two choices really when it comes to getting something fixed. You can either log it as a fault in the Tesla app by adding photos and a description, and then they would have called me back and booked me in, or, which is what I did, call their emergency line if your car is either undrivable or unsafe to drive, which no wipers in the rain is definitely unsafe. Remotely, they could see that the car was flagging a sensor error, so they booked me in. Now, I actually assumed they'd send a ranger out, but instead they actually collected my car on a flatbed lorry and provided me with a courtesy car. So I got the car back a couple of days later after chasing them just once for an update, and the fault, and this was apparently due to an uncommon fault, there was a cable under the bonnet or frunk that just wasn't plugged in, so it must have worked its way loose over time, causing the wipers to stop working. So other than that, I've had the odd black screen where it's been sat for a week or two and I just needed to wait for 10 seconds or so for it to come on. No other faults have shown up. So in terms of reliability, it's been pretty good so far. So if you've been looking at ordering a Model 3, what problems have you seen online that might put you off? Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a like on this video, as it really does help me out. And now, I've never owned a car that actually gets better over time for free. And what I mean by that are the free regular updates that we get in the Model 3, unlocking new features each time. So since picking up the Model 3 in November 2019, I've had new arcade games including Fallout Shelter and Cuphead. I've had a free 5% acceleration boost, improved voice commands, new autopilot features, and the in-car dashcam viewer, which is something that I asked for in my 6-week later review too. That means with every update I get something new added. It's practically an iPhone on wheels. All of this without even needing to visit a dealership, as it's done over Wi-Fi. What other car can do this? And next up, the practicality of a Model 3. So just ignoring the charging aspect of the car for a second, it's no different to any other 4-door saloon. The Model 3 has plenty of space for adults, children, luggage, and even bikes. Now, I use this car as our family car too, which actually surprises quite a lot of people who assume as soon as you have children, you need an SUV or a 4x4. But honestly, the Model 3 is more than capable of being a family car. In fact, I covered an entire video on exactly this subject if you wish to check that out too. So charging has never ever been an issue for me, and I mean, I charge at home anyway, so it's a case of pulling up on the drive, unwinding the charge cable and plugging it in. It's so convenient that going to a petrol station just seems like a distant memory. But range anxiety is real, but only if you don't plan your journey. Now, I make sure that I've always got at least 40% range each night, and if I know I'm going to need the car for a longer trip, I just make sure I charge it up to 80 or 90% the night before. There are loads of public chargers around too. Most are free. In fact, I've never actually paid for public charging. So I use my phone as my key, and this means that it's fully contactless when I unlock, lock, or drive the car. It comes with 2 key cards too, which you'd usually tap on the B pillar to unlock the doors. But the convenience of using my phone that's always in my pocket is incredible. Now, one thing that a lot of people have commented on is the interior being too plain, but I actually really like it. It's clean and minimalist. Everything is controlled via the center screen, which you don't really need to use when you're driving anyway, as you can use voice commands a lot of the time for most of the settings that you need. It makes traditional cars with hundreds of unnecessary buttons seem kind of old now. A bit like comparing an old Nokia phone from the 90s to an iPhone today. We just really don't need all of those buttons. But one thing that never gets old is the power delivery of this car. It's as smooth and as fast as you'd like. I've got the long range version, so the 0 to 60 is just under 4.4 seconds. It feels quicker though. And I've not yet opted for the £1,500 acceleration upgrade either, which will bring the 0 to 60 down to about 3.9 seconds. So I live in a rural area, so within 30 seconds of my door, it's just country roads and fields. But with that comes uneven and windy roads too. So the suspension is pretty firm. I'd compare it to a 3 Series. In fact, it's more sporty than comfy. So when driving around the country road, it can feel quite harsh, but there's no body roll at all. But one thing to note though is the front bumper and flies. As there's no grille, like what you would expect on a petrol car, every insect you hit just covers the front bumper. I've literally only cleaned this car this morning. It's honestly a really fun car to drive. I can't imagine ever wanting to own or drive a petrol car again. It's quiet, it's fast, it's cheap to run, it looks awesome, and it's environmentally friendly too. It kind of ticks every box. And being able to jump in it each morning with a full charge that costs next to nothing is incredible too, which brings us on to the running costs. Well, 99% of my charging is done at home, which is probably the same for most EV owners. So in the first 6 weeks, I covered 2,000 miles, but since then, I've actually only covered another 2,000 miles, and you could probably guess the reason for that. So running costs are made up of 3 factors: how much you're paying per kilowatt, what your efficiency is, and how many miles you cover. So in a petrol car, you're looking at miles per gallon, and you want that number to be higher than lower, whereas in an electric car, you're looking at watts per mile, so how many watts you're using per mile. In turn, you want that number to be lower than higher. So my car fully charged takes 75,000 watts or 75 kilowatts. Winter definitely hammered my efficiency though, and at the start of the year, I was averaging around 350 watts per mile. Now it's coming down and I'm seeing about 310, and I expect over summer and on longer drives I'll see around 280. This is mainly because where I live is quite hilly and I definitely have a heavy right foot. So how much does it actually cost? Well, I swapped my energy supplier to Octopus Go a few months ago, which means I'm now only paying 5 pence per kilowatt instead of the usual 13 pence I was paying before. So the first 2,000 miles cost me about £92 to charge at home versus £31 for the most recent 2,000 miles that I covered. So in total, it's cost me about £123 for 4,000 miles. But that will definitely improve this year with the cheaper energy that I'm now on. I predict 15,000 miles will cost me about £225 or 1.5 pence per mile. I've actually covered an entire video on home charging, so if you want to check that out, there'll be a link at the top of the video now. And if you're in the UK and you want to use my referral link for Octopus Energy, we will both get £50 added to our account, making charging even cheaper. There's also a link in the description below. Other running costs include insurance, which for me is £450 a year. That's about £50 more than my previous car. Then there are tyres and brakes, which after 4,000 miles I'm seeing no wear at all. It'll probably be about another year at least before I need to worry about that, and even then it'll just be a tyre rotation. And then there's no road tax to pay either, no oil changes, no fuel filters, no spark plugs. I don't need to worry about regular or yearly services. Other than brake fluid and washer fluid top-ups, it's almost worry-free to be honest. Running costs are very, very low, and if comparing like for like against a petrol car of the same value, it costs next to nothing to drive and maintain a Model 3. So if you can afford the upfront cost of the car, the running costs can be practically zero. So you've probably noticed that I've made a couple of small changes to the car, one being the replica carbon fibre spoiler, which took about 10 minutes to install, and the others being my vinyl number plates and the aero wheel removal. So I've been asked a lot about how I removed and installed the number plates on the car, so I've actually tried to cover this here. So basically, the number plate holder that's on the car is made up of 2 parts. The first part looks screwless, it looks like there's no way to actually remove it, but all you need to do is pull on the left and the right side of the frame where there's kind of a gap, a very small gap here, and it just tilts forwards. Once you've pulled that and tilted it forward, you can then slide the metal plates out, revealing some screws behind. Unscrew those, and now you have another 2 screws which will remove the back plate from the car. Now unfortunately the car isn't flat behind the plate, so when installing vinyl plates you'll want to fill the holes in if you can. I actually just used some blue tack on mine. Then I lined up the plates using washable felt pens and I stuck them on. Now you might see some slight bubbles or a dip behind the plate too, but that's where the panel is. Overall, I think it looks great. I really like the look of the vinyl plates, and I think it adds a nice clean look to the front end as well. It's 100 times better than the massive plate holders that it comes with. I've also dropped a link in the description to where I bought these. I don't earn any commission from this, but you will get 10% off if you use my link. So a few features which I like, which aren't really worth their own video, include not being able to drive the car when it's charging. So if you jump in, there's no fear of ripping your charger off the wall, as you'll always see a warning on screen as soon as you try to engage drive or reverse. A simple user error prevention, which I really like. I also like the fact that you can check the car status on your phone, check to see what your battery is at, turn the heating on and off, the air conditioning, unlock, or even sound the horn. It's great that I can now view and delete Sentry clips from within the car now, so there's no need to remove the USB and plug it into a laptop. It also syncs all of the cameras into one clip too, so you can view them all together, and you just tap through the different icons here so you can actually view the different videos. Now this is really useful for when you return to a car and Sentry mode, or the event for Sentry modes, have been triggered, and you can view it immediately instead of waiting until you get back home and plugging it into a laptop. I still wish though that you could enable all of the cameras like a 360 view when parking or reversing. That would be a really useful feature to be added. So the other day I asked you all to drop your questions in the community tab, things that you would like to know about owning a Model 3. So I'm going to cover some of these now. Some I've already covered in the video, so I don't need to go over those again, but let's dive in. I'm not worried, no. The battery and the drivetrain are covered for 8 years. It'd be long gone before then. Plus, they are rated for hundreds of thousands of miles. So hate is quite a strong word, but I'd probably say the thing that I dislike the most is probably the rear view camera, especially in the rain and at night. I mean, it's almost unusable sometimes. Okay, so I actually used a comparison website. I used Compare the Market, which that definitely found me the cheapest insurance. So I pay about £450 a year with Churchill. That's for fully comp with 12 years no claims. But when I was getting quotes, it varied massively. The lowest two were £400 odd. Then it jumped to around £2,000 up to about £5,000 or £6,000. So fingers crossed that when it comes to renewal, the prices don't jump anywhere near that kind of price. Yeah, okay, good question. In a normal world where I'm driving over 1,000 miles a month, I'd say yes, but the savings on fuel and maintenance outweigh it. But right now, I'm not really saving too much. Like for like though, a £50,000 Tesla will be cheaper to maintain and run than a £50,000 petrol car. That's a fact. But you can't compare a £50,000 Tesla to, say, a £10,000 petrol car and expect it to cost you less. Okay, so here in the UK, it's unlikely we'll suffer from those kind of conditions, but no, I've not seen any issues with the paint yet, no rust or anything like that, other than it being slightly thinner paint, or thinner than any car I've owned before. Still looks awesome though, really happy with it. From what I can see, there's no way to remove it. It looks like it's built into the car, much like any other saloon. And even if you could remove it, there's not really any space above it before you hit the rear window. And as you can see here, this is inside the boot, and the parcel shelf area, it's not really removable at all. I would definitely agree with you. I mean, it's definitely noisy. Once you're doing 70 plus, you can hear the wind and the road noise a lot more. It's definitely no BMW or Mercedes when it comes to refinement. My previous cars I've kept anywhere between 3 and 5 years, so I'd probably guess the same here. But anything could change in that time. They could bring out a facelift or manufacture their own batteries with greater range. So it's difficult to say really, but I would say 3 to 5 years. Well, my closest supercharger is actually 50 miles away, so I rarely use them except for longer trips down south. If I'm not charging at home, I will either use a Rolex or SpawnPoiint public chargers. Both these are for free. For my local ones are both free, but they do only charge at 7 kilowatts though. So sorry I couldn't answer them all. There were dozens and dozens of your questions that came in. Maybe I'll do a dedicated Q&A video on the Model 3 ownership. Let me know in the comments if you think that would be useful. But one last question that I will answer is this one. Honestly, right now I'm still really happy with the Model 3 and the spec that I have. For the reasons I didn't pick the standard range or the performance model, the long range still suits my needs. It's fast enough, it's got plenty of range, and the small mods that I've added really do enhance the look. I don't regret choosing this version at all. I also didn't get the full self-drive, and I'm actually really pleased that I didn't. Other than showing it off, I personally would not have benefited from it at all. But if the rumours are true though, that some upgrades may be available via monthly subscription, in which case I would definitely give it a try. I would definitely like to give Full Self Drive a try on a monthly subscription. But overall, the car is incredible. It genuinely puts a smile on my face every single time that I drive it. So if you can afford the upfront cost, go for it. You will not regret it. And if you are looking to order a Model 3, feel free to use my referral link in the description too. We'll both get 1,000 free supercharger miles, even if I'm not using mine, and it gives me an idea of how useful my videos are too. Well, as always, thanks for watching, and I hope this video was useful to you. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram. Until next time.